I never believed a single stare could change a person's life. But that was before the day I walked into St. Augustine Medical Center, scared, exhausted, and desperate for answers. And the doctor who walked into the room changed something inside me forever. His name was Dr. Adam Hayes. Everyone in that hospital admired him. The nurses, the patients, even the families who only met him once. He had that kind of presence, calm, warm, impossibly gentle. The kind that made you trust him before he even said a word. But the way he looked at me that afternoon wasn't the way he looked at everyone else. It was different, unexpected, dangerous in all the softest ways. And I felt it instantly. The shift, the spark, the gravity pulling me toward him even when I tried to pretend it wasn't happening. I kept telling myself it was just kindness, just professionalism, just my stupid heart wanting something it couldn't have, until the moment he stepped closer, touched my arm with steady fingers, and looked into my eyes like he was trying to understand something no one had ever bothered to see in me before. That was the moment I knew, and that was the moment I realized I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. Not the truth, not the feeling, not the confession that slipped out of me before I could stop it. I think I'm falling for you. What he did after that, the way he reacted, the way he changed my life in a way I still don't know how to explain, is the story you're about to hear. Before we begin this journey of connection, healing, vulnerability, and a love that was never supposed to happen, but somehow felt inevitable, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because the next chapters will take you somewhere deep and unforgettable. People always say hospitals smell like antiseptic and fear. To me, they smell like second chances. I was 20 for the first time I walked into St. Graydon Medical Center as more than just the sick kid. I wasn't a doctor or a nurse. I was a regular. The chronic heart patient who knew the cardiology wing better than them all. The guy who could find the lab with his eyes closed and quote the names on every pill bottle. My name is Noah Carter, and by the time this story begins, I already knew a lot about cardiologists. What I didn't know was how it felt to fall for one. It was supposed to be a routine follow-up, the kind where they listen to your chest, ask if you're taking your meds, nod, and send you home with another appointment slip. I was sitting on the exam table, the paper crackling every time I shifted, staring at a poster about heart health, trying not to think about all the ways mine could fail me. Then the door opened. "Hey, Noah, I'm Dr. Blake. Sorry to keep you waiting." I looked up. He was younger than I expected, early 30s maybe, with dark hair pushed back in a way that looked accidentally perfect, and a clean jawline softened by end-of-the-day stubble. There was a stethoscope around his neck, a white coat over scrubs, and a calm confidence in the way he moved. But what caught me were his eyes, warm brown, sharp and kind at the same time. He held out his hand. I shook it, and for a second too long, I forgot to let go. "Hi," I said. "Noah. Yeah, you already said that." The corner of his mouth lifted. "First visits are awkward. You're doing fine." He sat on the rolling stool, opened his tablet, and glanced between the screen and me. "So, I've been through your chart. Long history with us." "Yeah," I said, forcing a shrug. "I collect cardiology appointments like baseball cards." "That's one way to put it," he said, but his tone softened. "Does it feel that normal to you?" Normal? There was nothing normal about waking up some mornings wondering if your heart would keep its rhythm. But I'd spent years pretending there was. "It's my life," I said. "You get used to it." He studied me for a second. Getting used to something and being okay with it aren't always the same. His voice wasn't clinical. It wasn't pitying either. It was careful, present. He asked about more than my medication. "How's your energy? Are you working right now? Who's at home with you?" "I live with my best friend," I said. "My mom calls too much. I work part-time in a bookstore, so my main exercise is lifting hardcover novels." He smiled at that, and it changed his whole face. Bookstores and heart patients. That sounds like a dangerous combination. "Why?" "Too many emotional endings," he said. "Bad for blood pressure." I laughed, and the sound surprised me. I didn't usually laugh in exam rooms. The physical exam was routine, but it didn't feel like all the others. His hands were steady and warm as he placed the stethoscope against my chest. He told me when to breathe in, when to breathe out, listening with a focus that made the world narrow to just those seconds. "Your heart sounds good today," he said finally. "Today?" I repeated. "That's the key word, right?" He looked at me again, and there was something in his expression that wasn't just professional concern. "That's one reason I want to see you more regularly," he said. "Your numbers are stable, but I like monthly follow-ups for a while, unless you're tired of seeing US. I should have thought about missed shifts and bus rides and waiting rooms. Instead, the first thought that crossed my mind was, I don't mind seeing you. Monthly is fine," I said a little too quickly. His brows lifted just a fraction, like he'd noticed, but he didn't comment. "Good," he said. "We'll keep you boring. No drama with this heart if I can help it." "Boring sounds nice," I said. "I've had enough plot twists." We went over medications and warning signs. He talked, but he also listened. When I joked, "Sometimes I feel like a defective model," he didn't laugh it off. "You're not defective," he said quietly. "You're a human being with a condition. That's not the same thing. Don't talk about yourself like you're broken." The words landed harder than I expected. No one had ever corrected me like that. At the end of the appointment, he stood and rested his hand on the door, then turned back. "And Noah? Yeah. If anything feels off, pain, dizziness, or just that gut feeling that something isn't right, don't wait it out. Call. I'd rather see you 10 times for nothing than once too late." "Deal." There was something in the way he said, "I'd rather see you," that lingered long after the word deal left my mouth. When I walked out of the clinic, the sky was gray and heavy, the parking lot shining with leftover rain. I clutched my discharge papers and told myself the flutter in my chest was just anxiety. But I thought about him the entire bus ride home. The next month, I thought about him before my appointment. I stood too long in front of my closet, which was ridiculous, because he'd see my medical chart before he ever cared about my T-shirt. Still, I picked the one that made my shoulders look less narrow and my skin less pale. "Wow," my roommate Jake said when I walked into the kitchen. "You look fancy for the cardiologist." "Shut up," I said, grabbing my keys. "It's just a checkup." On the bus, I rehearsed neutral answers to simple questions. "How are you?" "Fine." "How's work?" "Busy." "Any chest pain?" "Only when you smile like that." I knew better than to say the last one out loud. The second appointment felt strangely familiar. He walked in with that same easy stride, that same half smile, and greeted me like he actually remembered me, not just my chart. "How's the bookstore?" he asked while checking my blood pressure. "Loud," I said. "Apparently people can argue about fantasy novels the same way they argue about politics." He laughed. "As long as no one's throwing hardcovers at your head, I'll allow it." He remembered the bookstore. He remembered my mom. He remembered the joke I'd made about collecting EKGs. It was small, ordinary, nothing anyone else would have noticed. To me, it felt huge. I told myself he was just a good doctor, that this was his job, that he probably made every patient feel this scene. But then on my third visit, as he listened to my heart, he said quietly, almost to himself, "Slower today. That's good. You must be sleeping better." My chest tightened. "You remember my usual heart rate?" I asked. He didn't look up. "I remember a lot of things about you." The room felt smaller suddenly. I stared at the ceiling, counting the tiny dots in the tiles, trying to get my breathing under control. I had a crush on my doctor, and based on the way he sometimes looked at me, like he wanted to ask a question he wasn't allowed to, I wasn't sure it was entirely one-sided. I should have created distance, guarded myself. Instead, with every visit, I let myself fall a little more. I just didn't know yet how far I was going to go, or how much it would cost both of us when I finally said the words out loud. "I think I'm in love with you." I didn't expect the next morning to feel different, but it did. When I woke up, the first thing I thought about wasn't class or rounds or the usual way of my routine. It was him, Dr. Aaron Blake, his eyes, the way he looked at me last night. Not like a doctor seeing a patient, not like a stranger doing his job, but like a man who'd suddenly noticed something he wasn't supposed to. And the way I said it, "I think I'm falling for you." The words still echoed through me, half terrifying, half liberating. I wasn't sure if he pretended it never happened, or if he'd look at me differently again, or if he'd avoid me completely. I got dressed slower than usual, replaying our conversation in pieces, my heart racing every time my memory landed on that moment. The slight hesitation he had before leaving the room, like he wanted to say something more. When I arrived at the university clinic, the hallway buzzed like any other morning. Students, nurses, the soft hum of machines. But for me, everything felt oddly sharpened, like every detail was charged with anticipation. And then I saw him. Dr. Blake stood near the nurse's counter, flipping through a clipboard. He was wearing dark blue scrubs today, his hair slightly messy, like he hadn't slept well. My chest tightened immediately. He looked up. Our eyes met, and something in his expression shifted. A quick flicker of something warm, something uncertain, something that made my heart flip. He cleared his throat softly and gestured to the exam room. "Evan, can we talk for a moment?" Hearing my name in his voice again, I felt it all the way in my spine. I followed him inside. He closed the door gently behind us, but I could tell he was trying not to make the moment look suspicious to anyone passing by. When he finally turned to me, he let out a breath, slow, controlled, like he'd been rehearsing. "About what you said last night," he began. I felt my pulse jump. "Look, I'm sorry if it made you uncomfortable. I didn't mean to." He lifted his hand slightly. Not to touch me, just to stop me from spiraling. "No, don't apologize," he said softly. "You were honest. I respect that." I swallowed, nodding, not trusting myself to speak. He looked down for a moment, then back at me. I didn't know what to say at the time. I tried to breathe normally, but every second stretched impossibly long. Then he added, "And I'm not sure I know what to say now either." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. I stepped back instinctively and sat on the exam table. "What are you thinking?" I asked. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, not defensive, just contemplative. "I'm thinking about the fact that lines like this aren't supposed to blur." My chest sank a little. "I know, but," he continued, "I'm also thinking about how I felt around you." I froze. He ran a hand over the back of his neck, clearly frustrated with himself. "Evan, I'm not blind. I'm not immune either. You're easy to be around, easy to talk to. You're genuine, and that's rare." I didn't blink. Couldn't. He let out a shaky breath, the first crack in the perfect calm he always carried. "When you said what you said yesterday, it caught me off guard, but it didn't scare me." His voice softened even more. "It scared me how much I understood what you meant." My heart clenched, painfully and beautifully all at once. "Are you saying you feel something too?" I asked quietly. His eyes held mine, steady, raw. I don't know what to call it yet. But yes, something. Definitely something. I felt myself smile, small, disbelieving, but real. He stepped closer, but kept a respectable distance. "Evan, we have to be careful. People talk. People assume. And I'm your doctor, even if it's only temporary." "I know," I said, voice low. "But I also know," he added, "that I haven't stopped thinking about you since yesterday." My chest warmed instantly. "And," he said with a gentle, conflicted smile, "I don't think you stopped thinking about me either." I laughed nervously. Not even for a minute. Silence stretched between us. Heavy, hopeful, fragile. Then he said, "I'm not saying we should do anything reckless. I don't want to pretend nothing's happening. Not anymore." My voice barely came out. "Neither do I." He exhaled, relieved. "All right, so we take this slowly, carefully. No assumptions, no pressure." I nodded, unable to stop staring at him. "And," he added, stepping half a step closer, "if I look at you differently sometimes, it's because I am—" The words hit me with impossible gentleness. I felt my breath shake. "Aaron." He blinked once, slowly. "Yeah, you're looking at me like that right now." A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "I know." We stood there in that electric silence, the kind that makes you aware of every heartbeat, every breath, every possibility hovering between two people. Then the door handle clicked. He straightened immediately, stepping back just as a nurse poked her head in. "Dr. Blake? Room 6 needs you." He nodded quickly. "Be right there." The nurse left. He turned back to me one last time. "Evan, come back after your last class today. I want to talk more." My throat tightened with something soft and unspoken. "I'll be here." He nodded, lingering for one long, meaningful second before finally stepping out of the room. When the door closed behind him, I realized my hands were shaking, because for the first time, something real was beginning, something neither of us expected, something neither of us could ignore, and maybe, just maybe, something that could become love. I didn't expect to see him again so soon. After the night in the ER, after the way my heart hammered every time Dr. Adrian Cole looked at me, after the stupid confession that slipped through my mouth, "I think I'm falling for you," I thought he'd keep his distance. That's what doctors do, right? Maintain boundaries. Stay neutral. Stay professional. But he didn't. 3 days later, I walked into the clinic for my follow-up appointment, and the moment he saw me in the waiting room, something warm flickered in his eyes. Not surprise. Not awkwardness. Recognition. Maybe even relief. "Evan," he called, leaning slightly against the doorframe of the hallway. "I can take you now." Hearing him say my name did something to me. Something I tried really hard to ignore. I followed him down the hall, trying not to stare at the way his sleeves were rolled up, revealing the veins on his forearms, or the way his hair looked like he'd run his fingers through it too many times. He walked with confidence, but also with gentleness, like someone who knew the way to people's pain and handled it carefully. Inside the exam room, he closed the door softly, not with the snap doctors usually do. "Sit wherever you're comfortable," he said. Comfortable. The problem was I didn't feel comfortable anywhere near him, not with the way he made everything inside me shift, warm, ache. I sat on the exam table anyway. "So," he said, pulling up a stool and sitting in front of me, "how's the wrist?" I lifted it slightly. "Better than before. Still hurts when I twist it." He nodded, that focused expression returning. The one that made him look like nothing else in the world mattered except the person in front of him. He reached out and took my wrist gently, turning my arm palm up. His touch wasn't clinical this time. It was warm, careful, human. "Tell me if it hurts," he murmured. It did hurt, but that wasn't why my breath caught. His fingers traced along my forearm, pressing gently, checking mobility. Each touch sent tiny sparks up my skin, and I was painfully aware of how close he was. The smell of his cologne, clean, understated, with something cedar-like, filled my head. "You're tense," he said quietly. "You're the reason." I almost said, but instead I laughed awkwardly. "I guess I'm still nervous." He lifted his eyes to mine. "Are you nervous because of me?" I didn't expect the question. Not like that, not direct, not soft, not without judgment. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. "Maybe," I whispered. Something shifted in his expression. Not shock. Something closer to understanding. He looked down again, still holding my wrist. "You know," he said, voice lower now, "most people who confess something like you did, they don't come back." I felt the air leave my lungs. "Did you want me not to come back?" "No." He said it so fast it almost startled me. He swallowed. "No, Evan, that's not what I meant." His thumb brushed over my palm, a tiny movement, probably unconscious, but it sent a wave of heat through me. I didn't pull away. He didn't either. "I just didn't want you to feel embarrassed," he added quietly. I looked at him, searching his face. "Are you embarrassed?" He let out a slow breath. "No." That single word shouldn't have meant as much as it did, but it felt like a door opening just a little. He released my wrist slowly, deliberately, as if he didn't really want to let go yet. For a moment, we just stared at each other, suspended between what we were supposed to be and what we both felt tugging at us. Finally, he stood and grabbed my chart to write something down, putting a few inches of space between us. Space I immediately missed. "Your wrist is healing well," he said, "Try and sound clinical again. Another week or two and you'll be fine." But his voice wasn't steady. His hands weren't steady either. "Dr. Cole," I said softly, He looked up immediately. Yeah, you know I meant it, right? I whispered what I said. He froze. Not visibly, not dramatically, but I saw it in the way his shoulders tightened, in the way he lifted his chin, in the way his eyes flickered like he was weighing something impossible. I know, he said finally. His voice was rough, like the words scraped their way out. And I asked. It came out before I could stop it. His breath hitched. His hand tightened faintly around the edge of the chart. He looked torn, like someone standing on two sides of himself. One wanted to step forward, the other trying to pull him back. And it's complicated, he murmured. I nodded, though my chest ached. Because you're a doctor. That's part of it, he said. And because you're... He hesitated. Younger? I asked. He shook his head quickly. Not exactly. You're an adult. That's not the issue. Then what is... He took a step forward. Closer. Too close. I don't want to hurt you, he whispered. My throat tightened. You're not. You don't know that. I think I do. Silence wrapped around us. Thick, warm, dangerous. Then a knock on the door shattered it. Dr. Cole, your next patient is waiting. He stepped back instantly, professional mask snapping back into place. So fast it broke me a little. I should go, he said. I got off the table. Yeah, of course. But when he reached for the doorknob, he paused. Evan. Yeah. He didn't turn around. He didn't look at me. But his voice, soft, cracked, unsure, said everything he couldn't. I haven't stopped thinking about you. And then he left the room before I could breathe again, let alone answer. The door closed behind him. I stood alone in the exam room, my wrist throbbing faintly, but nothing compared to the way my heart was pounding. Whatever was happening between us wasn't just in my head. He felt it too. He feared it too. And somehow, impossibly, he didn't want to let it go. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dr. Adrian's face in the exam room, his gaze softening, his breath catching for a split second when I told him I felt something for him. That moment replayed so vividly that it was impossible to tell where memory ended and fantasy began. I told myself I was imagining it, that no doctor, especially one like him, would ever look at a patient that way. But the more I replayed that tiny flash of emotion in his eyes, the more I knew it wasn't my imagination. Something happened. Something real. Something we both pretended didn't. The next morning, I got ready for my follow-up appointment with shaking hands. The air felt heavy, like the world knew something important was about to happen. I arrived early and sat in the waiting room trying not to look suspicious or terrified. Every sound made my heart jump. A nurse calling a name, someone coughing, shoes squeaking on the linoleum floor. And then the door to the hallway opened, and there he was, Dr. Adrian Hart, perfect white coat, stethoscope tucked in his pocket, dark hair slightly messy like he'd been running his fingers through it. But his eyes found me immediately, and they softened in a way that made my breath stumble. Mr. Reyes, he called, but his voice wasn't the professional tone he used with others. There was a warmth in it, a warmth meant only for me. I stood, trying not to look like someone whose knees were about to give out, and followed him down the hallway. The clinic felt too small, too bright, too charged. Every step he took, I watched the way his shoulders moved, the way he held the tablet against his chest. He was trying to look calm, but he wasn't. He closed the door to the exam room behind us. Not all the way, just enough to give the illusion of privacy, the illusion that he wasn't breaking the rules. He leaned against the counter, crossed his arms, and looked at me with this mix of curiosity and conflict. Before we start, he said quietly, about what you said yesterday. My heart lurched. I shouldn't have said it. I whispered. I didn't want to make you uncomfortable. His jaw tightened. You didn't make me uncomfortable. I blinked. I didn't. No, he said, slowly shaking his head. You surprised me. That's all. Silence stretched between us, thick enough to suffocate both of us. He cleared his throat and tried to switch to professional mode, checking my chart, asking routine questions, listening to my breathing. But every touch lingered a moment too long. Every time his fingers brushed my skin, there was a softness that wasn't medical at all. When he placed a stethoscope on my chest, his hand hovered there, warm and steady, longer than necessary. "You're nervous," he murmured. I laughed shakily. "You think?" He met my gaze. "Is it because of me?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't have to. He inhaled sharply. "Listen," he said softly, "I can't cross professional boundaries. You understand that, right?" I nodded slowly, even though my heart was breaking. Of course. I never expected anything. He looked away like the words hurt him. "That's what scares me. You didn't expect anything, and yet, somehow, I still feel like I'm failing you." "You're not," I whispered. "You've been nothing but kind." "That's the problem," he said under his breath. "I'm being too kind." My breath caught. What does that mean? He opened his mouth to speak, but a knock at the door interrupted him. "Dr. Hart, you're needed for consult in room 2. He swallowed hard. "I'll be there." When the nurse walked away, he closed his eyes for a second, as if battling something inside. "I don't want to hurt you," he whispered. "You aren't," I said. His eyes opened, so full of something raw that it made heat rise up my neck. "You have no idea," he whispered, "how complicated this is." He took a step toward me, then another, until he was close enough that I could feel his breath. "But I need time," he said quietly, "to think, to understand what I'm feeling." My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. "Okay," I managed. "Take your time." He looked at me like he wanted to say more, but he didn't. He forced himself to take a step back, then another, putting distance where neither of us wanted any. "I'll call you," he said, voice shaking slightly. "Not as your doctor, as someone who owes you an honest answer." Then he walked out. I stayed frozen in place, the room echoing with the tension he left behind. For the rest of the day, I checked my phone every 5 minutes, hoping, waiting, wondering what he would say, wondering whether I'd ruined everything or opened the door to something beautiful. Night fell. Still no message. I told myself to sleep, to stop obsessing, to stop imagining the look in his eyes when he stepped closer to me. But then, at exactly 11:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was him. One single message. "Can we talk? I can't stop thinking about what you said." My heart leaped, because I knew whatever was coming next wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I didn't sleep the night before, not even for a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. The way he brushed my wrist with his fingers like he wanted to memorize the shape of me. The way his voice lowered when he said my name, as if it meant something more than a patient sitting on his exam table. Dr. Adrian Lewis, the man who had tilted my world off its axis without even trying. And today I would see him again. Walking into the clinic felt like stepping into a different version of myself. A version I wasn't sure I was ready to become. The waiting room was quiet, washed in warm light from the afternoon sun, but everything inside me raced. My hands felt cold. My heart beat loud enough to hear in my ears. When the nurse finally called my name, my legs almost gave out. "Right this way, Evan." I followed her to the same exam room as yesterday. The same room where I had felt his gaze linger a second too long, where the air felt charged in a way I didn't know how to name. She took my vitals, asked a few routine questions, and said, "Dr. Lewis will be in shortly." Shortly, it felt like the world held its breath with me. When the door finally opened, I swear the temperature in the room changed. Or maybe that was just my body reacting in ways I could no longer ignore. He stepped inside wearing a navy sweater instead of his usual coat. Sleeves pushed up to his forearms, hair slightly messy as if he'd run his fingers through it too many times. And when he looked at me, it wasn't professional. It wasn't distant. It wasn't neutral. It was warm, soft, something between curiosity and longing, something that made my lungs tighten. "Morning, Evan," he said. "You made it." "Of course I did," I replied, though my voice cracked embarrassingly. His lips curved into a small smile. "I'm glad." He closed the door gently, and somehow that small sound felt like the world getting smaller, shrinking down to just him and me. "How are you feeling today?" he asked. "Nervous." I admitted before I could lie. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly, and the seconds stretched between us like heat. "Nervous because of me?" he asked quietly. My throat tightened. "Maybe." He exhaled slowly, almost as if that answer affected him more than he expected. "Well," he said softly, taking a step closer, "I should probably apologize for yesterday. I shouldn't have stared at you like that." "You didn't stare," I whispered. He raised an eyebrow gently. "I did." I swallowed. "I didn't mind." That changed everything. He stopped in front of me, not too close, but close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. He rested one hand lightly against the counter, as if trying to anchor himself. "I'm not supposed to feel anything for a patient," he said quietly. "You know that, right?" "I know." And I told myself I wouldn't let anything happen. His voice lowered, breath catching. "But then you looked at me yesterday like you saw something I didn't mean to show." I felt heat rush through me. "I did." He closed his eyes for half a second, as if my honesty physically hit him. "Tell me," he said in a voice that was almost a whisper, "what did you see?" "You looked at me like you wanted me," I said, trembling, "and I think that scared both of us." His eyes opened, and the truth was right there. Raw, undeniable, real. He took one step toward me, then another, until he stood directly in front of me. I felt his breath brush my cheek. My hands shook in my lap, so hard I had to grip them together. "Evan," he said gently, "I shouldn't cross this line." "Then don't," I whispered. His jaw tensed. "But I want to." The room fell completely silent. I felt something inside me unravel, something tight that had been holding on for too long. "Adrian," I said softly, "I haven't stopped thinking about you since the moment you looked at me yesterday. I know this is complicated. I know it's risky, but I can't pretend I don't feel something." He let out a shaky breath, and it felt like the air between us caught fire. "You shouldn't say things like that," he murmured. "Why not?" "Because I'll believe you," he said. "I want you to." His resolve broke. Completely. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed his fingertips against the side of my face. My eyes fluttered shut at the warmth of his touch. "God," he whispered, "you're shaking." "I know." He gently tilted my face up. "Are you scared?" "Yes," I whispered truthfully. "But not of you." "Of what, then?" "Of how much I want this." His breath hitched. A single, quiet sound that felt more intimate than anything else could have been. He leaned in, so close, so impossibly close that I felt his lips brush mine, without even touching. But then he pulled back suddenly, running a hand through his hair like he was wrestling himself into control again. "I need be careful," he said, voice rough. "I don't want to hurt you. I don't want you to get the wrong idea." "What idea?" "That this is just attraction or impulse or something reckless." He took a breath. "Because it's not." I stared at him, heart pounding. "Then what is it?" I asked. His eyes softened into something that felt like truth. "I think," he said slowly, "I'm falling for you." My chest ached in the most beautiful way, sharp and full and overwhelming. "Adrian," I breathed. He stepped closer again, gently this time, and took my hand in his. His thumb grazed my knuckles with a kind of tenderness that made everything inside me tremble. "Let me take this slow," he said. "Let me do this the right way." I nodded, my voice gone. "Come back tomorrow," he murmured. "I will." He smiled, small, helpless, full of something real. "Good," he whispered, "because I don't think I can stop myself from wanting to see you again." When I woke up the next morning, sunlight slipped through the blinds like it was trying to gently shake me awake. My first thought wasn't fear or doubt or anything heavy like it used to be. My first thought was him, Dr. Adrian Pierce, the man who turned my carefully quiet life upside down with one look, one moment, one truth I never planned to say out loud. "I'm falling for you." And he didn't run. He didn't shut down. He didn't treat it like something I should apologize for. He stayed. He listened. He took my trembling hands in his and told me the truth I thought I would never hear. You make me feel something I didn't expect, something I don't want to ignore. I replayed that night again and again as I sat up in bed, heart fluttering like it still didn't know how to react. It didn't feel real yet. Nothing about yesterday felt real. But the warmth in my chest proved it was. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I wasn't afraid anymore. At the clinic, everything looked the same. White walls, fluorescent lighting, the smell of antiseptic. But I felt different walking inside. Lighter, braver, steadier. When I reached his office door, I didn't knock right away. My hand hovered in the air, my heart racing with a mix of anticipation and nerves. Before I could do anything, the door opened, and there he was. Adrian's hair was slightly messy, like he'd run his fingers through it a dozen times already. His lab coat was unbuttoned, sleeves rolled up the way I secretly adored, revealing strong forearms and a quiet confidence he didn't even try to show off. But what caught me wasn't his appearance. It was the way his face softened when he saw me, like he'd been waiting. "Morning," he said gently. "Morning." I answered, my voice warmer than I expected. "Rough night?" He smiled a little, only the part where I couldn't stop thinking about you. My chest tightened. "God," he really meant it. He stepped back to let me in. "Come on, before the clinic wakes up." Inside, everything felt strangely intimate. The blinds were half closed, sunlight slipping through in soft gold lines across his desk. The faint hum of the air conditioner filled the silence between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was expectant. We stood a few feet apart, each waiting for the other to speak first. Finally, Adrian ran a hand through his hair and let out a quiet breath. "I've been thinking a lot," he said. "About you, about me, about how this happened." My heart pounded. "Do you regret it?" He looked up sharply. "No, not for a second." His voice was low, steady, full of conviction. "What I regret," he continued, stepping closer, "is letting fear stop me for so long." I swallowed. "Fear of what?" He stopped right in front of me, close enough for me to feel his warmth. "Fear of wanting something I wasn't supposed to want," he said softly. "Fear of crossing a line. Fear of hurting you if I wasn't sure." I felt something melt inside me, slowly, beautifully. And now, Adrian reached out, carefully, like he was asking permission, and brushed his fingers against mine. "Now I'm sure," he whispered. "I want you in my life. Not as a patient, not as a moment, as someone I care about." My breath trembled. "I care about you too." He smiled, small and genuine, the kind of smile that makes your heart ache in the best way. "I know," he said. "I felt at the moment you looked at me yesterday. The moment you told me the truth." I laughed softly. I didn't exactly plan it. He chuckled, a warm, deep sound that made my knees weak. "No, but it was the bravest thing you could have done." I looked down, overwhelmed by the honesty of it all. But Adrian wasn't done. He slipped his fingers fully between mine, interlacing our hands, and lifted my chin so I would meet his eyes. "Look at me," he said quietly. I did. "You don't have to hide anymore," he whispered. "Not from me." And in that moment, in that small, sunlit office, everything inside me finally settled. The questions, the fear, the uncertainty, all of it quieted, because his hand was warm in mine, because his eyes held no hesitation, because for the first time, something felt right, really right. We spent the next hour talking, not as doctor and patient, not as two men caught in a moment they didn't understand, but as equals, as two people choosing something fragile and new. He told me about his past relationships, the expectations placed on him, the loneliness he never admitted to anyone. I told him about mine, the heartbreaks, the fears, the moments when being gay felt like walking through fire alone. Somehow, our stories intertwined. Somehow, the broken pieces fit. Somehow we fit. Time passed without us noticing, until someone knocked on the door. "Dr. Pierce, your next appointment is here." Adrian squeezed my hand before letting go. "I want to see you again," he said quickly, "but not here, not as your doctor." My heart lifted. "Where then?" He smiled. "Tonight, 7, the cafe across from the clinic." I nodded, smiling back. "I'll be there." And before I could leave, he leaned in, not rushing, not forcing, just gently, and kissed my cheek. Soft, warm, a promise more than a gesture. "See you later," he whispered. I walked out of the office with my heart in my throat, barely aware of my surroundings. The hallway felt brighter, the world different, like something inside me had finally opened, for the first time in a long time. I wasn't walking alone. I was walking towards something real, something hopeful, something that felt like the start of a love story neither of us planned, but both of us desperately needed.